small child. Spencer always talks about how he grew up in the small town just next to us, and his dad was in public service. He was a small town mayor, and his cousins were all EMTs and firefighters, and he wasn't that great at that. So when we moved back, he really dug in and started becoming part of the political world there, the small teeny little town where he was the mayor and the county commissioner, and that was part of who we were. It's how we grew up. It's why it's become so important. We saw the beauty that comes from when we connect as a community, and we don't want to lose that. And Utah's been such a great place to do this. We were so enthralled with service because of what we saw, how it helped our community, how it helped people, how it helped us when we were serving in our community. That when we decided to run for governor, it was really an opportunity for us to rethink how we could do a campaign. And it was this moment where we thought, you know what, we've watched all these campaigns, we've watched how they have torn communities apart, they have torn each other down. Candidates go out and just show the worst of us. And we thought, what if we could do this differently? What if by the time we got done with our campaign for governor, that the state was actually a better place, whether we won or lost? Could it be a better place because of the campaign? And so we borrowed Spencer's dad's RV, we wrapped it with our campaign stuff, and we went around to all 248 cities and towns in Utah. And not only did we visit there, we decided instead of campaign rallies, instead of debates where we were up there stumping and tearing our opponent down, what if we got our fingers and our hands and everything dirty? Painting doors we did all number of things in each community, and it was powerful. Not only did we feel the goodness and the joy from serving, but we were able to connect communities together. This was during COVID, this is before and after COVID, where we were engaging with each community, and what we found was powerful. It was a powerful moment for us to really see what service can do, see what connecting communities can do, and the power of that. It's been really fun to watch what's happened since, and the friendships and the relationships that we developed throughout the state. Just like parents, we love the people who love our children. Communities love the people that love the community, and it's a powerful tool for connection. So as I started as First Lady, we tried to figure out what could we do, what can me and my team do to perpetuate this idea of service and connection, empathy, all the things that we learned through the campaign. And so our mission is tied around this idea of connection, empathy, creation of community. And so we've been working in the areas of child welfare, where we emphasize lifting the burden of our foster families by surrounding them with caring communities that address their needs. We work with Special Olympics, unified sports, giving opportunities for children of all abilities to connect with their peers and make lasting friendships when they play on the same teams together. We've been working in educator wellness, where we need to help the helpers, making sure that they have the tools and resources to be their best selves and to lift and build the next generation. And we've been using service to build and celebrate the best of us. The purpose of our gathering here today is not only to celebrate service that benefits our neighbors and those around us, but to show how much good it does for the giver, for our mental health, for the way we heal the tensions of our great nation. Service, when we are in the service of our fellow citizens, we truly are in the service of something much bigger than ourselves. Um, as we know, there are so many in this community that are helping to make this happen. Again, those of you that are working this space throughout the country, we are with you. We want to just highlight a few of our people here today that are making a difference. Just Serve is the key sponsor for our symposium today. We know that service builds communities while breaking down walls of misunderstanding, fostering trust, peace, and unity. Just Serve is a movement that focuses on bringing community members together to serve one another and to make meaningful contributions to society. Just Serve has developed as a humanitarian gift to the world from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they are in 17 countries across the world. As key partners, Just Serve will be capturing the stories about the important service from attendees throughout the day. So we would invite everyone to get with them and share your story. We also want to thank Savage Companies for sponsoring the keynote address by Major General Joseph Heck that we will hear later today. First, before we get started, we're going to watch a video from the Schultz Foundation that was produced about state and national service, and then I will be joined on stage with 3 amazing youth voices to hear how service has changed their lives.
In 2021, nearly 1 million Utahns volunteered through various organizations, contributing an estimated $2.7 billion in economic value to the state of Utah. We have more volunteers per capita than any other state in the nation. As governor, I want to continue to grow the number of Utahns who are volunteering and committing to national service.
In Gosha Springs, it is about 2,000 people. There are a lot of people with a lot of different beliefs working in the school. So it was really important that we could learn how to come together as a community despite our different beliefs and do what was best for the kids. Being able to connect with them and to watch them grow was just really rewarding.
Well, what I found very exciting about my service was that I got to get beyond the 4 walls of the clinic. I felt more hands-on with the community, and I got to see that direct impact that I was making to my community. I am a proud Houstonian, born and raised, so just to know that I was making a difference in those underserved populations was something that I will never forget.
I would encourage anybody to join the National Service Program because you learn so much about your surroundings and your community, and you can help so many people. You're also healing and helping yourself to become a better person.
Here, Washington America members work to restore and protect more than 7,500 acres of public land. They've distributed more than 6 million pounds of food to people experiencing food insecurity and provided more than 10,000 people with job training, financial literacy services, and housing assistance. I'm proud to serve Washington in the continued championship of this work, and it's time for policymakers around the country to join us.
Service isn't a partisan issue. It's how we offer young people the skills they need to forge a promising future.
We'd like to welcome our young adults to the stage, and we're going to have a little panel here talking about their experiences. First of all, welcome. We've got Ruby, and she is a first-generation student at Weber State. Samantha, she has participated in relief efforts, natural disasters with the Utah Conservation Corps. And Landon, who is with the Utah Air National Guard. So please give them a warm welcome to the stage. As we talk about service, and we know Utah's been awarded and been talked about as the #1 state for service and volunteerism and charitable giving. We know that here, but if we're not intentional about spreading that message and that way of life to the next generation, then it's not going to always be the case. So we are so thrilled with the way this next generation is perpetuating that service as a way of life. So Ruby, let's start with you, and I just want
first generation student, so that just means my family didn't go to college. And it wasn't because they didn't want to, but it was just because they didn't have that opportunity. And I just knew how important it was to be involved in school, and so I did everything possible, and my sister was the wage breaker for me. She went to a polytechnic school down in New York, she's the most brilliant person I've ever met. And then she realized she didn't have to go to a big school with a fancy name to get the college education she really wanted. She figured out that school really wasn't for her. She ended up going to Sage Community College because it was smaller and it was a lot more comfortable for her. And that's when she actually found out about mental health and the importance of that. And unfortunately, in my community, the Hispanic community, it's a lot harder to talk about your feelings and all that stuff. But I remember watching my parents struggle, go through the citizenship process. I remember my mom going through the citizenship process and listening to CDs in the car of Benjamin Franklin did this and that. And I was like, oh, cool. And that's how I became a history nerd. I just love history and I love politics just because of that. And I don't know if you knew that, but I just remember listening to these things. But I also remember listening to them talk about money and talk about how are we going to afford this? How are we going to take care of the kids if I have to work and my dad has to work and we have to work long hours and my mom worked 2 jobs and all these things. And so I just remember seeing that problem, money, and what are we going to eat? How are these little kids going to be okay? Who's going to take care of them? And it was really hard seeing that and understanding and coming from that background because I saw my parents break their back and cry and know what it felt like. I just knew what it felt like. So when I went and worked with reservations and I worked with these little kids who just didn't have their parents at home, not because they didn't want to, but because there was no other choice. I went and worked with the Lakota reservation. It's known as a Sioux reservation, but it's a derogatory term. They don't like being called that. It just means snake. And it was what the French called them. They're snakes. Because if you don't know, the Lakota people were the last people fighting against the United States, against all these things that were happening to them that were very unfair. And so when I went there, I came with this idea of what I thought history was and what I thought about this and that. And then I would just sit there and I would listen to these people's stories. I listened to stories of Eileen Bray, who survived boarding schools. If you don't know what a boarding school is, you should look it up. It's very sad, but it's very needed to know. It's a need to know thing because what Ray was just saying is I don't want to make people feel bad. I don't want them to think that I'm mad at them. I just want them to know what it was. I just want them to know how I felt. So when I ask for these things, when we talk about these things, I want them to know. And that's just kind of how I feel too. When I talk about immigration issues, because I want to be an immigration lawyer, or when I talk about first generation students or scholarships for low income and EDI, stuff like that. When I talk about these things, it's not because I want people to feel bad or anything. It's because I want them to understand where I'm coming from. When I talk about when there's days I wasn't sure what I was going to eat, or when there was days when I wasn't sure how I was going to pay for school, or even though I had my school completely paid for, I still couldn't pay for it at home, and I had to find ways to do things. And so that's just kind of what my story is. It's just I try to understand everything, and I understand there's no way to understand everything, but when you really want to help someone and you really want to understand where they're coming from, you have to be there with them. One of the things at Weber State, I know Alexa Bucknam, and she's the director of Center for Community Engaged Learning, that's where I work, we always talk about doing things with intention and also not saying, like, I've always seen people go and say, I'm going to sit there and make a book to teach English to save these people. If you're not saving them, you're working alongside them. We're not there.
to get proximate.
It turns out that was actually the best thing that could ever happen to me. The military was at the forefront of my mind. And I did some research into it, talked to people, talked to neighbors who were in, and I eventually found out about the National Guard, specifically the Air National Guard. And I'm so glad I did, because I was able to see that not only do you get to have a unique impact at the federal level, but you also get to participate at the local state level and have the ability to be of assistance if there is a crisis that happens here in the state, and still be engaged with your local community and support them. And so that was what sealed the deal for me in joining the National Guard in 2012, and it's been a great journey ever since.
Samantha, you've had some very unique experiences as well, and you know, when we talked earlier, you expressed the way your experiences with AmeriCorps and Conservation Corps and how that's helping you to look forward to your future education and the future career that you'll have. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so AmeriCorps, I can't say enough good about it. The workers that I was with were some of the warmest people. I think AmeriCorps does a great job of doing their very best to provide a safe space for all of its members, in terms of inclusivity and opportunities for leadership. So for me, in education, but largely in career, it opened my eyes to what is possible for me. I saw just about as many women as men leading in the field with chainsaws, doing the work, and so that inspired me, and I think AmeriCorps really puts out the call to folks who otherwise may have never considered a career like wildland firefighting, because I think they might have dismissed it at a glance as a man's job, and it puts out the call and says, no, you can do this, and you might love it. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful for them in my life. And it opened my eyes to, in terms of disaster response, what a community needs at a national level and at a local level. After a national emergency, and I saw we need funding, we need more boots on the ground, and we need good training, and I would love to see more cohesion between agencies, shared information, like the National Guard and AmeriCorps and the volunteer groups, nonprofits, churches, so that communities can have a very planned response that puts people at ease before the hurricane strikes. And
Yes, it's powerful. I love that. The preparation that happens through these experiences for your future career, for your future education, we can see that, we can see the experiences that you're having that are going to change the world, literally. And Landon, let's start with you with this question that I want to ask to everybody. But what barriers do you see that yourself or others face in getting civically involved? And then maybe on the flip side of that, what doors, we talked a little bit about what our future looks like, what doors have been open to you because of your service?
I think that when it comes to barriers for National Guard and military in general, a big barrier could be the time commitment. Even being National Guard, where you have the ability to come home and be part-time and have a civilian career, there's still a significant initial commitment to spend a few months in basic training, and then after that, you're going to tech school, which ranges from 2 to 24 months, depending on what you're going to be going into. And so that can be a lot to just drop your life and leave and disappear for that period of time. But by focusing on the impact and what you're able to do coming out of that, it makes all worth it. And
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and so many good things have come of it. You're asking about like some of the doors that have been open for him, and I'd say I have met some of the most incredible people just in the Guard and through working in the Guard, and they covered my school. I opened for state, computer science degree up there, and it's just been an accelerant for everything that I've been doing, both in my civilian career and military career. It's just all compounded because of the Guard.
Yeah, Samantha, what have you seen that are barriers that you see either for yourself or others, and doors that have been open to you as well?
with firefighting, and huge barriers like them, the same time commitment. The job is all consuming during the fire season, and which is expanding. And so for people with families, it's not as feasible. And I think it holds women back from going into those leadership positions, helping to develop a nurturing culture and safer culture for everyone by being in those leadership positions. Because if you want to have a family, you have this time out. You can't be in the field the way that you want to be. And so the insane schedule of being gone for 14 plus days at a time, all summer, or between April and November, they have that schedule because of payment and not being paid fairly. Firefighters depend on working 1,000 hours of overtime to be able to provide for their families, and that's not fair. And if there were more funding and a permanent pay increase for them, it could change everything, where there'd be more attention, there'd be more reinforcement, replacements. We could rotate people out, it would be healthier, and people would have that work-life balance that we all need.
Yeah, and doors that have been open to you.
Doors, yes. You could, with the Forest Service, you can go anywhere, and you can transfer to national parks, beyond. I just feel like the door of nature has been open. I've seen so much and traveled, and it's been really beautiful in that sense, and that's why I keep doing it.
So
Ruby, let's talk, again, what are those barriers that you see for people getting involved? I mean, you're in your state, you're working in service organization, and what barriers do you see that your student, you know, and your peers and other people are not getting involved, and why? And then, you know, what are those doors you see open to you?
Yeah, so I'm also in AmeriCorps. I do it through Weber State, so it's really cool because Weber State offers those opportunities for students to do service through community partners. These community partners are like really close to us, so it's like Lantern House, it's Christmas Box, it's what is it called? It's my favorite one. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's Youth Futures. It's where these kids who have been kicked out of home don't have a place to live. A lot of them are LGBTQI people who their family just don't agree with who they like or who they love, and so they kick them out of their houses. And these little kids, these are kids, teenagers who just don't know where to go, and they're just like, I don't know where to go. Like imagine you're a teenager who's barely learning about puberty, and you're thrown out into the world just because you don't agree with your parents. Like parents who should love you and who should try to take care of you, and they just threw you out there, and you're just trying to find how to live. That's just rough. And when I would go serve with them, I just loved it because these kids were like, of course, there were some little problems that they had, but they just were so happy to have anyone who cared about them. And so that's something that I thought was really interesting. Was I had someone who loved me, and I had someone who cared about me at home, and they made sure that I was able to do things, whether we couldn't afford it or not. They just tried to make sure that we could do things. And so that was one of the barriers I noticed in school, is unfortunately, our parents are very busy, I understand that. But my parents kind of instilled in me that the next person's a lot more important, and is a lot more important than what I'm thinking and doing it for myself. It's always, it's not about ourselves, it's about the people around us. And so I always kind of learned like, oh, we should do service and this and this. And so that's how I always thought it was. And then I went to college, and like Dr. Buckman can tell you, like we have a hard time getting students to do stuff. And it's not because they don't want to, it's just they don't have time or the money. And I understand that because like in college, I'm still in college, I'm almost graduating, but I had 2 jobs. I had 2 jobs, and then I had to think about my parents, and I had to think about helping them, and I had to think about helping my brother, and I had to think about how I'm gonna pay for my food, how I'm gonna pay for school, how I'm gonna pay for my house. And so kind of in the back of my mind, I started pushing back service, but I was like, no, like again, it's not about me, it's about the people I touch. It's about pushing that forward, because a long time ago, I had people who helped me, and my favorite song is Humble and Kind by Tim McGraw. It says always help the next person in line. And so it's just kind of something that stuck with me. But I always noticed that as just students just didn't have the time, they didn't have the money. And one of the cool things we're doing at Weber State is we started offering stipends and like tuition reimbursement or stuff like that to help students do stuff. Because it's one less thing to worry about, right? And then we're also getting them involved in school. So it's when we're involved, when we're thinking about something else other than ourselves, we start to notice things, we start to think about the little things. We start to realize, oh, well, my day might suck because I probably failed a test, but today I get to go to hang out with these kids. And I just love it. I got to do Boys and Girls Club, and I got to work with these little kids and help them read. It's kind of funny to listen to little kids read if you've ever had a little kid read to you, but it's just so fun. And it made everything feel so much better. I felt so much calmer because I felt like I was doing something. I felt like, yeah, I may have failed the test or I might have not had a good day, but at least I'm doing something. And so I think that's one of the things is kids, students especially, and parents or anyone, they don't have the time, they don't have the money. And if there's opportunities like AmeriCorps where they help pay for us to do service, and a lot of people are like, what's that service if you're getting paid for it? Well, think about it as like a fast or like a blessing that comes that way. Like for me, AmeriCorps gets to pay for my school. And so that's awesome because I get to use that for what I need. And sometimes I have enough scholarships to pay for school. And so that AmeriCorps stipend will be reimbursed to me, and I can use it to pay for housing. I can use it to pay for my car. And it's really cool because when we do these things, when we offer these opportunities for students, we start to see students kind of be like, yes, I've always wanted to do this. There's another thing I used to do is alternative breaks. I used to do the director of it, and this year we're doing alternative breaks on the local level. Last year I went to South Dakota, that's what I did, but that's where I learned about the reservations. But now we're doing things at home, near home. We learn about outside, we learn about things like that. So I think that's what's important, is just offering the opportunity for students and just letting them do it. I understand it costs money, but if you let them do it, you're gonna see so much more things happen.
That's perfect. I love the focus on how it makes us feel as the givers, because that's equally important. We know that our mental health is improved. We've seen a lot of studies about how mental health and serving others actually, it improves our mental health almost equally as much as medication in some studies. And so we're seeing that for ourselves. If maybe just take one or two, maybe 30 seconds each, and talk just briefly about how you think the state and community leaders can do more to make you feel valued as you serve. Let's start with Samantha and go down.
Well, I'd love to see just representation of all kinds of people serving and continued funding for the Cycle Mayor Corps and the education session as well is really great. I can't think of anything else.
Perfect. Yeah, Landon.
Well, I think that I'm very fortunate to live in Utah, where the community has been extremely supportive of the military and has some great relationships with the local community leadership. And so I would just say two things that I've seen a lot of that make a big difference for the service members. The first one is just the expression of appreciation and recognition for their service, whether it's AmeriCorps, the military, whatever service it is that they're performing. That little thing goes a long ways. And second, for many of these positions, the service member's gone for weeks or months or even years in some cases. And so having the community leadership or the leadership at companies that the National Guard employees work at, having them be an extra layer of support for their families while they're gone, that makes a huge difference for those members and their families, and that's always greatly appreciated.
I like stipends, that's awesome, but I think the most important part is understanding that we're watching you. We see the things that you guys are doing, the things that you guys post, or the things that you guys talk about. And it sucks because sometimes it gets taken out of pocket and it's not the correct thing you said or the correct thing that you wanted to portray. But just remember, we're watching, we really care. It means a lot to us. And there's a little thing I started in high school, and I kept doing it, and people kind of think it's a little odd, but it was just, anytime I see a piece of garbage anywhere outside, anything, I pick it up and I throw it away. I pick it up and throw it. It's little, it's just garbage. It's just a receipt on the floor, or it's something little, but I know, I'm not doing it to be like, oh, Ruby's cool or whatever, but it's like, people see that, and like, I'm an FYE mentor, I teach. I help teach first year students at Weber State to help them learn about college. And that's one thing that they notice is I pick up a piece of garbage and I throw it away. And then I started noticing they pick up a piece of garbage and they throw it away. So what you do is very important because I'm watching, your kids are watching, everyone else is watching. I pick up a piece of garbage because I watch my mom pick up a piece of garbage at a park. And I do it. So it's so small, it's the littlest things. Just remember, it's not fair, but we're watching and we depend on it. We want to see you do something good too.
Thank you. Can I get another round of applause? Thank you.
Well, my first thought, hi, John Bridgeland with More Perfect, one of the co-sponsors of this event. And my first thought is that we ought to put First Lady Abby Cox, Ruby Landon, and Samantha on a national tour to advocate for national service and volunteering. Another round of applause for that. Also have to say, I was so struck by the First Lady's comments, when you look at our national life today, and a couple that ran together for governor visits 248 communities in an RV. I think you said you can call that RV1 now. And does volunteer service projects all across the state. It's sort of a model of what we need to unleash in the country. I've been asked to filibuster just a little bit because we're ahead of schedule. And I want to thank everyone for coming. And I want to just take a quick moment to mention something we pulled together called More Perfect. In the country today, we've mobilized 24 of the nation's presidential centers for the first time in history, which is so exciting, from Washington's Mount Vernon to President Obama, the National Archives Foundation, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, that produced this wonderful report called Our Common Purpose, that outlined what would be the pillars to strengthen our democracy. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting and over 100 partners that are working together across politics and sectors, ideology, to really build and strengthen 5 pillars of American democracy, the second of which is our topic today, Democracy Goal 2, which is national service and volunteering. And I just have to say, before we welcome our very special guest on stage, that Ruby, your comment, when I first asked General Stan McChrystal why he cared so much about mobilizing the nation around civilian national service, there you are. He said, it's not the stipend, it's not the Ed Award. It's that when people go in and serve, for example, and he said this, in a national park and clean up trash, they have a different view of this, literally the rest of their lives. It's sort of a cultural expectation of what our country can become. Last May, I was here in Salt Lake City. We had learned that there were 360,000 COVID orphans, young children who had lost a parent or primary caregiver to COVID. And we partnered with Governor Spencer Cox in launching the first in the nation's children's collaborative to help the 360,000 COVID orphans in the United States be identified, supported, and connected. And in that context, I had the chance to ask Governor Cox about what he thought about national service. And I've been talking to policymakers for 20 years about national service. He's the most enthusiastic, articulate, creative, robust thinker on national service, I think, in the nation. So please welcome to the stage the 18th Governor of Utah, Governor Spencer Cox.
So Governor, as you say, we have 5 chairs.
Yeah.
Chairs to choose from. It'd be awkward right next to you.
So this is a very authentic fireside chat. Yeah. So before we get into today's exciting announcements,
Yes.
I was struck by your lifetime of dedication to public service as governor, as lieutenant governor, state legislator, mayor, city council member, county commissioner. Did I miss anything?
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Dad, volunteer coach.
So, and the First Lady talked about it briefly, but there are a lot of young people in the audience, and I think it would be interesting if you could share, you were a teenager, a younger person at one point. What lit the civic spark for you? What caused you to want to go into public service?
But we do live in a remarkable state, and you heard from some of our remarkable students. There were a few things that happened in my life. One, my dad was the mayor of the little town that we lived in, 1,200 people. Now, look, I have to say right up front that everybody's dad got a chance to be the mayor of our small town. That's kind of how it works back then, and still does a little bit. But that was interesting to me. I was struggling as a kid. My parents got divorced when I was young. I had some some family members, extended family members, I would say, who are not maybe the best examples, who have been in trouble with the law and other things. And I remember there were two things that happened. One, we found this family history of my great-great-great-grandfather when he kind of came and settled in Utah, and his public service. And that kind of rootedness sparked something in me. My family, I had an uncle who worked in Washington, D.C., and we were too poor, we never traveled, never left the state. This was the first time we actually got on a plane for the first time in my life, and we went back to Washington, D.C., and they took, we went to all the different monuments and did all that. We went to Thomas Jefferson's home in Monticello, and that sparked something in me as well at that time, that I just became fascinated with history. I became a history nerd, and my dad just said, we have to give back. We have to leave our community better than we found it. So I have all these cousins who are volunteer firefighters and EMTs, and I didn't like blood or fire, either one. And so this was another way that I could give back. And I think those kind of things all combined to spark that in me.
That's fantastic. And Fairview, right?
Fairview, yeah. And I got to be on the city council, and the mayor of Fairview just like my dad, which is a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's quite a skyrocketing career, city council all the way to governor. And what an example you set for the country. So the last question that the First Lady asked of the panelists was, what can we do at the state and local levels to support, I guess I'd say, this culture of service and volunteering. And I understand you have some pretty exciting kind of comprehensive national service and volunteering platform you want to talk about.
Sure, yeah. Look, this is in our DNA here in Utah. We brag about it all the time. We like to tell people that we're number one every year for service. We're number one every year for charitable giving. And I started thinking about that. I realized, yes, it is in our DNA, but it's not inevitable that it will stay in our DNA. I think we have to be intentional about it. We have to articulate it, and we have to model it, and we have to give people opportunities. I will just say, just kind of as an aside, throughout the history of the United States, go back and read, Alexis de Tocqueville in the 1830s, he was here, talked about the service nature of our country, that we formed associations to find ways to build our communities and give back. And we still do that a little bit, although a lot of those associations are kind of disappearing. You don't see Lions clubs and Rotary clubs as much as you used to. If you go to our Rotary clubs, they tend to be, over the age of 70 usually. There are some younger ones, and I appreciate that. No offense to anyone in this room, but religion was the general driver of these types of service and volunteer opportunities. And that's certainly been the case here in the state of Utah. But as religious participation declines, again, I think we have to be even more intentional about where we're going to replace those with. And I don't think social media is a great way to replace those communities. I think it's shown to be the exact opposite. And so as we were thinking, what can we do here in our state to give people these opportunities? And so we announced recently a proposal that we handed off to the legislature. We appreciate Senator Ann Milner and others who are helping us to run this through the legislative process. But the idea is to create a pilot program, a couple of them actually, where we would for kids, and the Lieutenant Governor will talk more about this later. I don't want to step on her presentation, but the kids in high school would have an opportunity for service or service requirement for graduation. And then for those who have graduated, like our youth that we just heard from, giving them a year of service opportunity. And so we're proposing a stipend. The idea is that we want those who are interested students with organizations in the state, 501c3s, charitable organizations that are doing work. We try to be the matchmaker and help them get that match. And then for a year they would work there. We would provide a stipend for them. And then upon completion, they would get up to $7,500 in scholarships to help them with higher education. So this is kind of a win-win, I think, again, an opportunity for young people to serve, to give back, and then to benefit their communities, their state. It's a win for the state. We get some people who are helping us with some of the biggest issues that we have, and then they get some help when it comes to going to college or trade tech, university, whatever they decide to do with their post-secondary education. And again, it's a way for us to be intentional about it. If it works, I think it's a model that we can share with the rest of the country.
Just another fine point of worthy that is of applause. This idea of service year fellowships was included in the Serve America Act that Congress passed on a bipartisan basis. President Obama signed into law. It's never implemented. And then it was one of the leading recommendations of General Joe Hecht, Chair, National Commission on Military, National and Public Service. And Governor Spencer Cox is the first public official and governor in the nation to launch the Service Year Fellowship program. So I think that's worthy of another round of applause. So after 9/11, Governor Arce in the Oval Office briefing President Bush, he said, Rich, how are we going to measure an increase in volunteering in the national service in the United States? I said, well, the national service programs are easy. We can see how much AmeriCorps, Vista, Peace Corps, Conservation Corps, and these new disaster preparedness and response corps are growing, but actually there's no measure of volunteering in the United States. He said, we'll fix that. And so we put in place volunteering in the United States with the Census Bureau of Labor Statistics. And almost every single year, in fact, I think it may be every single year,
It is.
the state of Utah finished first. We also found, interestingly, that most Americans volunteer through faith-based institutions. You know, serving food isn't just a biomechanical act, it's an expression of their faith. And there's some issues, church state, you have to navigate, but say a little bit more about this ethic of service in Utah, the role of faith-based institutions. And then I also want you to address what First Lady Cox mentioned in her wonderful panel, the role of service in addressing mental health issues.
Sure. So we've been the butt of jokes for a long time. It's kind of a weird state, for sure. I get that. I think it's the kind of weird that the rest of the country is hungry for right now. And so you talked about faith-based. I'm a member of the predominant faith here in Utah. And at 19 years old, I left my family and I went to Mexico for 2 years. Nobody paid us. In fact, we had to pay to do that. We had the honor of paying about $10,000 for those 2 years that I was in Mexico, my family. And of course, we're preaching our faith, but we also had service hour requirements, and that was my favorite part of giving back, and it changed my life for sure. There's no question. I came to love the people of Sinaloa and Baja California Sur. I learned to speak their language. I was a minority in a place where I didn't fit in. And so that was a different experience for me, and it taught me to love people. It's Abby always says it's hard to hate up close, and that is absolutely true. And the love that they showed me changed me, made me a better person in every way, less materialistic, more open to new ideas, to new people. And so all of those things matter. And I want to just be very clear, the reason Utah leads in that category every year isn't because of the LDS Church, that's certainly part of it, but all of our other faiths as well. We have an amazing interfaith community here where we work together and give these opportunities. And again, the best part about it is once it becomes part of the culture, it expands beyond faith. So people of no faith, people we see it all over our state. There's just kind of this, this is what you do when you come to Utah. And so it's also the business community. I think this is really critical. We tell businesses all of the time that when you come to Utah, we expect you to give back. That's part of it. Part of your success here is your people volunteering. You donating to the local Little League organization or the homeless shelter, whatever it is. So those things matter. In fact, as part of this, I did be intentional about it. I actually issued an executive order now that's tied this. When if you get any type of when your business moves here, if you get any type of tax incentive, then you will now, moving forward, you will be required for any new position created with those tax incentives to provide 20 hours of service back to the community. We think that's really important. So you want to move your business from California, come here, great. Let me tell you how we do business in Utah. This is kind of the good side of like the mafia. It's the good mafia. You do have to give us something if you want to come here, and that give us something is you have to give back, you have to volunteer, and it will make your people better. It will make your business better. You'll be more successful. And then the mental health side of this, we had a neuroscience, one of the leading brain scientists in the country from UCLA here, and talking about this very thing. So look, we've done the research, and now the research is very clear that service and volunteerism is as good as medication when it comes to your mental health. And in fact, more and more of our mental health professionals are actually prescribing service and volunteerism before they prescribe medication, or in addition to medication. And heaven knows, if you look at the numbers today, we are desperate for solutions there. Again, not the only solution. Medication is really important. I'm not saying it isn't, but giving back, especially with our young people, can really change those attitudes. I just have to say, I also asked the question, what is compulsory service? What do we make our kids do service projects? And everybody kind of laughed, and she said, no, we've actually studied that too. It turns out compulsory service is just as effective as volunteer service. And you may think, I can't be right, but I want you to think about it a little bit. We've all been in that scenario where we're like, oh, we have a service project. I really don't want to go do this. I don't want to go serve food, or I don't want to go clean up that, whatever. And then you go, and you do it. It feels really good afterwards, right? You're like, oh, I'm really glad I did that. And so it's a real thing, and something we need more of.
Absolutely gets back to that kind of expectation in the culture. So when we all ask each other where to go to high school, maybe for many, where to go to college. It would be great if in this country we could say, well, where did you do your service year? I saw General Heck, nodding when you were talking about compulsory. So you're in this wonderful position, not only the governor of Utah, but chair of the National Governors Association. You wrote this wonderful foreword to this report that's being released today, State Innovations in National Service and Volunteering in Partnership with More Perfect. America's Service Commissions, led by the wonderful Kyra Escape, and Service Year Alliance, led by the terrific leader, Kristen Bennett. There she is. And with incredible support from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, Dame Louise Richardson, we're so glad you're in this country and leading that institution. Thank you for your catalytic leadership. And to the Schultz Family Foundation, we've worked with Howard and Marie Dork and Regina and the whole team for many years, and they're real leaders. So as chair of the National Governors Association, what can we do to encourage, and I see Paul Montero, Governor Westmore and others around the country.
Where is Paul? I need to see Paul.
Yeah.
Paul, there's Paul. All right, Paul, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. What can you do as kind of chair of NGA with your colleagues to make, as goes Utah and Maryland, so goes the nation?
Well, let me give a shout out to Governor Westmore, a dear friend. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. He comes from inner city Baltimore, grew up there. I grew up on a rural farm in Utah. He's black and white. You would think we have nothing in common, and yet he's one of my favorite people on this planet. I'm so excited for the work that they're doing. We're leading out in some ways. Maryland has beat us in some ways, and I'm proud of that. I'm glad that Paul's there at the cabinet level doing that work. And I think that's where we have an opportunity. First of all, Maryland and Utah, we need to prove that it works, and I think we can do that. One of the cool things about our republic is that we are laboratories of democracy, and governors, Frank Lund said, the governors are the last adults in the room when it comes to politics, and not all of us, most of us are still the adults in the room. There's a few that are at the kids' table. usually running for president, but we have an opportunity here to steal from each other, which is what we do. If something works in a blue state, we don't care if it's from a blue state, like we're gonna steal it. If it works in a red state, they're gonna steal it too. And this is something we wanna share. It is bipartisan, and heaven help us. It may be the last bipartisan thing or nonpartisan thing left in this country, that service and giving back build our communities, and I hope it never becomes partisan. But I'm really excited to share some of the data. We did some polling recently, and I haven't shared this, maybe I'll share it just quickly, because I wanted to see how Utahns felt about what we're proposing, right? This National Year of Service. And what we found is that Utahns are on board. Let me share this. So we asked this: do you support having a community service graduation requirement for high school seniors? And 61% said yes. Again, getting more than 60% of people to agree on anything these days is a little tough. What's interesting is ages 18 to 34, 59% said yes. We thought the younger crowd would say, no, don't tell us to do that. But the younger crowd said yes as well. And then we said, do you support young Utahns participating in an optional year of service while receiving a living stipend or educational scholarship? 65% said yes. And check this out, ages 18 to 34, 80% said yes, that they would support a year of service. So I think if Maryland and Utah can show that this is working and that we have support, and we can share that with our fellow governors, I think we can get more and a lot more.
That's outstanding. What a thoughtful approach. So I wanted to talk a little bit about you've come onto the national stage. I would love if you ran for president.
I thought we were friends.
But Tim Schreiber, who's a dear friend, who's been out in Utah a lot, has been raving about you, Governor, and First Lady Abby Cox. It's just such extraordinary leaders. And you've created this initiative called Disagree Better. And I'd love for you to talk about it for a minute, and also to talk about the relationship of Disagree Better to the National Service and Volunteer Community.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for anybody living in Utah. They're tired of it already. We're so done with Disagree Better right now. But the concept is really pretty simple. It's not just another civility initiative. As I was looking as becoming chair of the EFG, get to do an initiative for a year, and your other governors help me, whatever it is. And we were looking at healthcare. We were looking at immigration. We were looking at critical minerals and energy policy, all really important things for our country. And as we talked about it as a team, we realized that we can't accomplish anything if we all hate each other. Like Congress, if there's so much content, to solve the biggest problems, we have to relearn, remember how to disagree in a way that leads us to solutions instead of just tearing each other apart. We need a Congress that is actually doing something and not just performative. As governors, we have that opportunity. Governors have to get stuff done. We like to say that the potholes aren't partisan. And yes, we can have our disagreements, our partisan disagreements, but at the end of the day, we actually have to do something. Congress doesn't. They can just, go on MSNBC or Fox News and do their performance and whatever. And so we thought, well, could we design something that would help bring us together? And we worked with some of the policy labs at Stanford and Dartmouth, Duke, Harvard, some of the brightest minds in the country that are studying this. We wanted it to be scientific, not just a feel-good thing. And this idea of Disagree Better came forward. It's not about just being nice to each other or getting along. It's not that. It's about conflict. Conflict is really important. Our entire system of government was designed to maximize conflict and the incentives of conflict in an efficient way. So healthy conflict, which happens between branches of government, between parties, historically is actually good. Toxic conflict, which is what we're seeing now, is deeply troubling, and in fact is this toxic polarization we're seeing, we believe, is destroying these institutions that were designed for healthy conflict. And so that's what we're trying to do. The tie back to service is that what we know is that service is a way to depolarize, to bring different people together, to find healthy disagreement and healthy conflict. And so at our NGA meetings all across the country, Abby's been have holding service projects. So we show up. We were just in Colorado a couple months ago. We're headed to Washington D.C. And I think we're going to be in Tennessee after that. And we bring these governors. We bring people, members of the public together. In Colorado, we were putting together food packets for students who go home with no food on the weekends. And so it was a way, again, when you're serving and giving back, it's really hard to hate the person right next to you who's filling up those food packets.
Yeah, it's interesting, the AmeriCorps agency, and I want to give a shout out to Michael Smith, who wanted to be here very much, and he sent Sonali, the director of AmeriCorps, and I see Yasmin and Tess and the whole team. And one of the new innovations, I think, at AmeriCorps has been working with the service share funds to focus on the bridging power of national service people, to bring people together, different politics, races, ethnicities. I co-chair something called the Earth Conservation Corps with Ethel Kennedy in Washington, D.C., and we had the audacity to ask people who were serving, what's your political affiliation? And sure enough, a bunch of Democrats, a bunch of independents, and a bunch of Republicans. And it was just the knitting of America through national service is a powerful idea. But let me talk, beyond Disagree Better, you've had pretty impressive bipartisan accomplishments at the state level. Across your priorities, educational excellence, robust economy, improving health, protecting rural water conservation, national service, of course, and strengthening families. The national stage doesn't look like that. What's your secret sauce of success in terms of actually getting things done, which is what most Americans want our politicians to do?
So if you look at 2023 was a really good year for Utah, and just yesterday, a magazine put together all of the accolades that Utah received and awards over the past year, and it was 4 pages worth, including the one we're probably most proud of. U.S. News and World Report every 2 years does a comprehensive ranking of all 50 states. They look at over 1,000 different metrics in 70 different categories, and then they rank all 50 states in those 70 different categories. And Utah, for the first time, was the #1 place in the United States. The #1 best state, the #1 place to live, best economy. You just go down that list. And I get asked that often. In fact, we have researchers here almost every week. I get a call at least 2 or 3 times a month for researchers who are saying, we're trying to figure out what's going on in Utah. And look, I always tell them you just gotta get the right governor, and tongue in cheek, knowing it absolutely has nothing to do with government. Zero. Very little to do with the legislature, although we have an amazing legislature. I always quote the statistics about service and charitable giving, because I truly believe that that's at the heart of everything we do. Some of the metrics I think I'm most proud of that I think would maybe be of interest to this group. We lead the nation in social capital. We lead the nation in upward mobility. And those things are tied together. And it goes back to community. If you look, going back to Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone, right? When we started to realize something's happening in our country that's not good, that people are lonelier than they've ever been before. And we are wired for connection. And so what happens when you start to lose that connection? Well, you lose trust. And when you lose trust, economies fall. Democratic institutions crumble. All of the things that we've taken for granted as a country, when you lose that trust, become at risk. And I think we're seeing the results of that in our politics today. And so how do we fix that? Well, we have to build community. How do you build community? You have to get close to each other. How do you get close to each other? You get close to each other by serving and giving back. And so this is at the heart, and that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing today, because as good as it is in Utah, and it's very good, and I can't complain, we are starting to see some troubling trends. We're having fewer kids. We used to be our thing. We were really good at having kids in Utah. It's great, and we're doing less of that. We're seeing trust in each other starting to decline. We're seeing this political polarization. We're nowhere near the national level, which I'm grateful for, but we're starting to see more of it here as well. We're starting to see declines, as I mentioned, in religious attendance. And so, are there other things? How can we use community? How can we build community together? And this is one way we can do that.
That's amazing. That to me is the secret sauce. It's so rare to hear a leader in political life today who recognizes that citizen, not president, not governor, not senator, is the highest office in the land. And interestingly, as I think about the idea of national service and volunteering and what leaders have been recognized for. I see Mary Ellen Sprinkle, the Franklin Roosevelt Civilian Conservation Corps, which is a spiritual experience for 3 million people who were unemployed and starving and did extraordinary things for the country. I see the new head of Points of Light, George W. Bush, fostered thousands, millions of points of light. John Kennedy, yes, not, on and on and on. It's the leaders who recognize, like you, Governor, that the citizens have the power, the communities have the power. You get an RV1 and go to 240 communities with the First Lady and unleash a state. And I'm so excited to see you.
There's no other way, folks. This is it. This is it. Either we decide as a country that we're going to stop doing stupid stuff and hating each other and we start serving each other, or we lose it all. I talk to experts all the time. I see
and you start something called Welcome Down West to open up refugee resettlement in the United States beyond non-government resettlement agencies, community sponsorship, and individual sponsors. And when Alan and I and Cecilia and Naz asked our team, what state in the nation is doing the best job with welcoming refugees, newcomers to the United States with legal, safe, orderly pathways, they said, Utah, Governor Spencer Cox. Can you talk a little bit about, because that's a profound example of service and volunteering. And you really stepped up at a time of need when 85,000 Afghans, now over 200,000 Ukrainians, who were coming to the United States.
Yeah. We're really proud of our history here, our heritage for sure. I talked about that earlier on, that person, my ancestor, who inspired me, 150 years later. He and his wife had their home burned to the ground in the 1840s in Illinois by a mob who didn't want them there and disagreed with their religion. The funny story, my great-great-great-grandmother was home. She was pregnant. She had several kids. She had one child who was sick. My grandfather was out in the fields working when the mob showed up with pitchforks and torches, literally. And they pounded on her door and said, "You have to get out. We're going to burn your house down." And the kids ran out, and she said she had this piece of furniture. It was a prized possession that her dad had made for her. And she said, "I'm not leaving until you two help me move this furniture out." And they said, "No, I don't think you understand. We're burning your house down." And she said, "Oh, I understand. You're helping me move this piece of furniture out." So they put down their torches, and they moved the bureau out, and then they burned her house down. And the story goes, they're in their own writings, they cooked dinner on the ashes of the home that night. They moved to a different community, and a couple months later they came to Utah. So Utah was settled by religious refugees who were seeking to practice their religion in a country that didn't want them. By the way, this was not part of the United States when they moved here. And when they got here, that same grandfather, he was a blacksmith, but he was asked to go up and find the best pine tree, trim it down, put it up in the town square that was just being built, and to raise the flag of the United States of America on there. This country that kicked them out, they were so patriotic and so loyal to this country that he did that, and he raised that flag, and so I share that because I think that's really helped us. When President Trump decided that we weren't going to allow refugees into our country anymore, and many red state governors said no more refugees in our state. I remember waking up that morning, and you just heard one red state after another. They said no, then they said no, then they said no. Mike Maurer, where's Mike? He was with us. Mike's out there. We were sitting with, I was the lieutenant governor at the time, and Governor Herbert, we were sitting around the table, and we were like, what are we gonna do? Every state's going this direction. You kind of have to do it. And we're like, we just don't feel right about this. And if you Google it, you should go read. It was my proudest moment serving with Governor Gary Herbert. Many proud moments, but he said in Utah we were founded as a state of religious refugees. We believe in helping those who are suffering and the marginalized, and we will always be a state that welcomes refugees. And he was the first red state governor to come out and say, no, we're going to do this. Everybody thought there would be tremendous blowback. It would hurt his chances, his poll numbers would go down, and they didn't move an inch. And I was so proud of Utahns for supporting him. So when it came time for our Afghan friends, it was an easy call for me. And I sent a letter. I was the first governor, red or blue, sent a letter to President Biden saying we want Afghan refugees here. And we did something that had never been done before. We started an Afghan refugee fund where we raised $1 billion from the private sector, all private donations. And that money was used to supplement everything else that those refugees needed. Many of them needed legal services that would not be paid for from our resettlement agencies. They needed other things that just aren't part of that. And so we had that funding available for them. And we reached out to our faith-based partners. And I have to tell you, the families that stepped up to support and help and find housing to these families, they are still, a couple years later, still deeply engaged in that work. The families have just become friends. They do everything together, and it's changed all of us for the better. So again, another one where I know I get some credit, but it wasn't, I didn't have to think about it because of the work that had been done by other people, because I live in a state where this is part of who we are, part of our culture. But again, culture doesn't just happen. I know we say politics is downstream of culture, and I believe that. I do believe that. But I'm telling you, if Governor Herbert, at that moment, it's something we never really thought about. If he doesn't take that stand in that moment, it's very different when it becomes my turn. We just did it, nobody thought anything of it because it's expected here in Utah. So we, the people, have the ability to influence and change culture in powerful and positive ways, and we need more of that.
I do have to share because of your leadership, because a Republican governor stepped up to take this bold act on refugee resettlement. Now 38 of the nation's top CEOs have provided over $400 million to support the cause. And the bipartisan leadership led by you really helped bring them along. You know, all these efforts require public-private partnership. And all the people in this room in some way are touched or engaged or involved or care about or want to advance national service and volunteering. And I just have to call out, when I went up to Capitol Hill, a little discouraged, but to meet with the wonderful What Works Clearinghouse. There had been this new caucus that had been formed that was actually focusing on what does evidence tell us it's effective in government that we ought to expand. Of course, National Service has been on that list for a long time. Former Congressman and Mayor Ben McAdams was the co-chair of that caucus with a Republican colleague from Indiana. And just epitomized, like you, Governor Cox, what leadership can mean and what can be brought to it. The last question for you. This effort takes a public-private partnership. You're stepping up as governor. Senator Milner, is she in the audience with us? I'd like her to stand.
She's here. I'm not sure she's
Not here yet.
We have
But we're gonna hear from
5
her
things
later.
going on. She'll be here later.
Yeah, we're gonna hear from her later. She's exerting incredible leadership, as you mentioned. But what about the private sector? And I think you have something you want to talk about.
I
Featuring
do.
the private sector.
Yeah, I do. Look, we're so very fortunate to have private sector partners here in the state of Utah. We're even more fortunate when national and world leaders help and support us. And so today, I'm very excited to announce, as I mentioned, this program that we're launching. We know it's going to take some money. We've asked the legislature for some money. It gets much easier to ask the legislature for some money when you have private sector and nonprofit sector funds that are helping us out. And so the Carnegie Foundation is one of those partners. Today, they've announced $3 million towards these service efforts. The best part of that is, the best part of it for me is 1.1 million of that 3 million is coming right here to the state of Utah for our effort. And again, I think this is an opportunity for us to show the rest of the country that we can do it and that we have these national partners who are willing to help us out. So Dave, Louise Richardson, thank you so much for your leadership, your partnership, and your willingness to help us out. Thank you so much.
Governor, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, now the pressure's on. We all need to leverage the public and private commitment to move a nation. And I see Paul shaking his head, which is very encouraging, because he, together with Governor Moore and Governor Cox, are really stepping up to lead. I also wanted to mention, you'll hear from her later, but Kyra will remind us there are state service commissions in all 50 states and territories. And the Lieutenant Governor of Utah leads that state service commission, does an extraordinary job sort of setting the pace. And there's a reason, leadership does matter. There's a reason Utah's #1 in volunteering in the nation every year, because you, Lieutenant Governor, do such a superb job every day, every week through the State Service Commission. So we're going to wrap up. If Addie tells me that's okay. You want us to wrap? So I just want to end by saying, the founders had a favorite quote in the middle of the revolution. They said, we cannot ensure success, but we can deserve it. And it's a really tough time for our country right now. And I don't know about you, but I have anxieties over the state of our democracy. And beginning 2024, with the shot in the arm that is Abby Cox, Governor Cox, and all of you moving the National Service and Volunteering agenda with such principled leadership and such credibility, I really do hope, as goes Utah, so goes the nation. So final word of applause and thanks for Governor Cox.
All right, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, but we're gonna go ahead and just take a slightly longer break, and we'll come back at 11:15. There's still snacks and